Good afternoon and welcome everybody. I'm very happy to be here for the second meeting with Michael after the first interview made in July. Today we will continue our journey to discover how lean process excellence can be developed in sales and marketing. And in particular, today we'll understand the meaning of value and waste in sales, how to recognize them, and how to put them at the center of commercial processes and activities. Last but not least, we will talk also about the importance to know and to map the customer journey. Well, I don't want to steal our guest time. Please, Michael, you can start. And from STAUFEN.Italia, thank you again for your availability today.
Thank you, Marco. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. What we're going to discuss is really important.
Yes.
Although obviously manufacturing is a system that's improvable, most business-to-business companies don't really think about sales and marketing as a system that can be improved in a similar way. And as we'll see, it really is a production system. It really does improve business results. And we're going to talk about how that works, why that works, and so forth. I still have a bunch of late people coming in. So to begin, you attending this meeting probably, you might be a managing director, you might be a sales VP or a salesperson, or you might be someone wanting to influence one of those.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so the natural reaction, since you understand continuous improvement and lean, is, well, we need to apply lean to sales. We need to eliminate waste in sales. And unfortunately, this presents a challenge because sales and marketing people tend to resist. Now, you may hear from your sales team, you know, you cannot save your way into improving sales, right? You have to spend money to make money. Buyers make decisions based on emotions. You can't forecast that, right? It's a numbers game. The more calls you make, the more proposals you make, the better chance you have of succeeding and meeting the numbers. And even though we know half of our marketing budget is wasted, there's like nothing you can do about that. That's just the way it is. That different mentality that we find in the sales culture makes managing sales very different than managing manufacturing. And it's as though there's this Chinese wall between the way sales and marketing thinks and the way manufacturing thinks. And this creates a great deal of frustration and lost business opportunity. Now, my purpose for you today is to understand that this wall does not need to exist. The Chinese wall is founded on some hidden and incorrect assumptions. And when these assumptions are removed, then the Chinese wall dissolves.
It's a big challenge, and Michael.
Yeah, it is one, but the good news is it doesn't cost a lot of money. It just involves how we think, right?
This is always good news. Perfect.
So you remember in our last conversation,
Yes.
back in June,
Yes.
that we talked about assumptions that salespeople make versus assumptions that manufacturing people make. And in sales, you know, forecasts are based on a salesperson's opinion. In manufacturing, forecasts are based on facts, right? On the performance of the machines and so forth. These opinions are things that you just cannot get away from in sales and marketing. And another aspect of opinions that people make in sales and marketing is the way they think. The salespeople all have their own ideas about what makes customers buy, about what to do in their particular situation. And we talked about how these inconsistencies can make sales unpredictable, make sales less like manufacturing. But, you know, we're going to unpack that and see how to make it aligned more with our thinking in manufacturing. And the first principle of lean is the principle of value, right? We build these production systems in order to produce something that customers want. Now, let's do a quick poll, if we could. We'd like the participants to simply type into the chat window what comes to their mind when we ask the question, what value does your company create for your customers? And what we want to do is just compare some of these, because there's going to be similarities and differences, and it'll help us to unpack this idea of value that is at the root of lean. So if you could tell me what some of those things are when they come up, Marco, why I will.
Yes, we wait. Okay, when I satisfy the customer,
I'm going to type them in as we, I'll go back and forth in here between presentation mode and editing mode, and I will type some of those things in as we get some.
Okay, there is a Sylvia that told us, when I satisfy the customer, I deliver the product or service within the defined time frame.
Okay.
With the agreed quality specification.
Okay, meet spec.
Yeah. Other point is when I solve the problem during his buying process. Also, we have from Andrea, bye Andrea, build trust, margin, production stability, and service and experience to systems. Perfect.
Okay.
I can I can add another, like if I were a participant, is a typical in our project is easy maintenance.
Right. Okay.
Good.
Excellent.
Do you have some other participant that want to send his evaluation? Understand and solve the pain of the customer. Paolo?
So understanding and solving the pain of the customer.
Yes. First impression, Michael, is there are a lot of different point of view in this, this answer.
And look how few of these actually have to do with the product specification.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's pull this back over here and move on to our next point.
There is also one is interesting, also for the second part that we explained after, is make people happy.
Yes. Put that in a specification.
Yes. I appreciate a lot this.
Right. So in a lot of the value that customers get, according to this list, I mean, meeting specification, that's tangible. Solving their problems may not be tangible. Building trust, how do you put that in a specification? It's more about how your whole business operates. Right. So there are things in here that are specific to individual companies and individuals that you sell to. There's answers that are related to customer problems. And often in the field with salespeople, I bet they spend a lot of time in their proposals and in their selling talking about product features. And those are important. But product features and the parts, the specifications of the product are very, very unique. And some of these other things like trust and solving problems and building confidence, those are kind of universal, but they're not tangible. So if you talk to salespeople about value and what does it mean to the customer, you often get descriptions that they may be similar, but often they're divergent. Sometimes they're conflicting. You teach them a new sales training technique, and one may say, well, that won't work in my accounts, right? So salespeople have grown up in this environment where they have to make judgments based on their experience, their feeling at the moment as they're talking to a customer. They have to be intuitive. That's what we count on them for. But they also have to face facts. And sometimes facts in a sales environment can be kind of hard to come by. The point we're trying to get to here is that everybody, especially in sales and marketing organizations, everybody is living in this environment of the blind man and the elephant. We talked about this back in June. Yes. It's a favorite theme of mine. We have people from different backgrounds all around this elephant called trying to get customers to buy. And they're seeing and experiencing different things. This can be quite a problem in sales unless we embrace it. The parable asks us to demonstrate respect for people, which is a foundational principle of Lean, but it's often perhaps the one that's the least understood. This idea of respecting people implies an understanding, a particular kind of understanding of human nature. And so it's a way that has long been used in production facilities that have been effective with Lean to earn the employees' hearts and minds, to recognize that everyone around the elephant is an equal contributor. We have our opinions because we've lived the life that tells us that's what makes sense to us. So we have to respect every individual's opinions, where they're coming from. We have to cherish data that anyone provides. And we have to speak openly and acceptingly about problems, not blaming people, but analyzing problems in order to figure out how to prevent them in the future.
And sorry, Michael, this is important, and in particular in the sales world, because the seller often are totally alone on the field.
Yes.
And so it's not so easy to create the right background to convince them that it's possible to make this.
Yes. And so all the more important when a sales leader or a company leader is talking to their people when they are all together, especially in the same room, listen to the team through the parable, right? Are people hearing each other's point of view? Do they understand where each other is coming from? Are they respecting each other's positions? Are some people being quiet and just not contributing as much as others? Okay.
Not only the process, the activities, but also the behavior and the involvement for the people. Sure.
Yes, right. And this, as you pointed out, Marco, it's crucial in sales because everyone's starting at a different spot. And because it's an opportunity to recognize the good in people and not try to interpret them. It's an opportunity to develop a common language. Yes, go ahead.
And also the potential for the people, the sales people. This is another important key.
Right. So when people have come from different backgrounds, different countries, different cultures, the idea of the blind men in the parable enables us to help them build a common language. They can learn a lot from each other. And paying attention to what those words mean in reality helps everyone develop a more accurate picture of reality. Right?
And this is the basis, sorry, Michael, this is the basis of the Lean approach, and the same for the operation, but also and more in sales, sure.
Right. And so now we get to investigate Lean in sales and marketing, and that is hinged on this idea of value. Remember our poll, what value does your company create? And some of the things that came out of there were, more universal. Some of them are obviously very, very tangible. And if you focus on lean, what we hear people in the lean community often saying is lean eliminates waste. So what's the problem? And in sales and marketing, it's quite a problem because waste isn't a primary concept. Waste is the absence of value. So it begs the question, what is value? And in lean, we say, well, value is what the customer will pay for. And informally, the man on the street, well, value is what people want. But in sales and marketing, this is an issue because we don't know what people will pay for. When we
yes, this is a little disruptive in front to the traditional lean approach, but in lean sales, something is real different. I totally agree with you.
Right. Sometimes people think that value is subjective. It's ineffable. I mean, it can't really be understood. Other people make decisions on emotions and all that. So what we're going to do here is unpack this idea of value. And I'm going to just briefly, a little story here. This poor fellow, Ishmael, has been lost in the desert for about a week. Obviously, he's dying of thirst. He can't walk anymore. What is of value to Ishmael? If suddenly before him, he comes over a sand dune and there's a brand new car, is that valuable to him? What if instead, when he comes over that sand dune, he sees an advertisement for freshwater ponds? Is that of value to him? What if he comes across a pond of fresh water that he can just douse himself in? Obviously, that's of value to him. And the point that we're trying to make is that value is contextual, right? If he has a brand new car and the keys to it, and there's no road to drive it on or no gas to put in the tank, it's not useful. If he has this advertisement to call somebody to put a pond right away in front of me, but he doesn't have a working cell phone because he's out of range, the advertisement doesn't help him. Right. So since value is contextual, that does not mean that it is subjective. It's quite objective. It means that we have to define we need an operational definition of it, right? Value is that which one acts to gain or keep, and it requires answers to the questions to whom and for what. So this is sort of what I call the tangibility problem. In manufacturing, we focus on production targets. In sales, we focus on booking targets. In manufacturing, we have tangible methods. In sales, it's not tangible, right? We're keying off of what the customer says. We're using words to describe things. We're trying to affect how they feel and what they believe. In lean, we have very powerful mathematical even tools that we can apply. In sales and marketing, they're taught sales training and best practices. Sometimes those work and sometimes they don't. So salespeople rely on whatever works. But this does not mean that value is unknowable. It is knowable, period, full stop. It means that we require an operational definition.
But what is, Michael, the operational definition? It's not so simple.
Well, and that's what we're getting into here, right? We know we have operational definitions in the factory, right? When you take a measurement of something, it's the procedure you go through in order to get the number. You have to go through the same procedure each time because if you change the procedure, you change the number. It's a way of knowing things, right? And it's the same in sales. So in order to explore this, we got to get to this sort of second principle of lean, which is the value stream. Now, in manufacturing, value streams are usually defined in terms of the work that your people do. Very natural, makes sense to do that. In attempting to be organized and structured like that, most B2B sales processes also focus on what salespeople do. So they prospect for leads, they qualify opportunities and so forth.
Sorry, Michael, also is the real difference in the sales, because in the operational funnel, the input is the raw material. But in the sales, the input is totally different, no? Because it's the customer, is the prospect, is the leads, is the market, there is also the competitor. So just to start at the first phase of our sales funnel is totally different, and so is more important to define the right operational definition, in my opinion, in my experiences. Right for you?
Yes, I totally agree with that. And it goes back to this context. We have to define, you know, to whom, for what are we looking for? Now, the thing about defining a sales process in the way we just described, in terms of the way of what salespeople do, is that sales activities, I mean, they're just part of the system. If a salesperson has a customer and they're having trouble after the salesperson has to get involved in that, right? If a salesperson doesn't have enough qualified leads to make their number, the salesperson has to go make up for that lack. Your customer looks at you as a single organization. And as a result of that, your organization has to look at itself as having a single purpose. So when companies have divergent key performance indicators, it just drives misalignment. And we see this a lot in business-to-business companies. So the marketing department has a budget for an ad spend to generate leads. The more leads for that ad spend, the better.
Michael, sorry, Michael, about the maximized leads, how is important in your experience to define in the right way the qualification criteria?
And we talked about that in June. Again, operational definition, define things down to what salespeople can observe about their accounts. And if you have a marketing department that's not involved in that, right, then there's a disconnect. If you have a service department whose primary measurement is to stay within their budget, there can be a disconnect. And so this is how the sales process becomes divergent. And if they're not aligned together, then they're competing with each other, right? Sales activity only adds value when it aligns to what the customer is doing. So we need to have effective conversations throughout what we call this customer's journey, where they realize the problem, prioritize the problem, and solve the problem, right? We have to find common definitions of value so that there's a customer wins and we win also. And we have to actually facilitate that the customer gets the result that they expected to get. Now think back to that sales funnel that we had. Does it mention those things?
Yes. But sorry, Michael,
yes.
Just a brief consideration. Obviously, I agree with what you said, but I would like to point out why it's so important to know and to map in systematic way the customer journey. In our experience, is important because at every stage of this journey, the customer has different objective and expectation, does different action, has a contact with different people within the company. And if the sales process doesn't reflect this expectation, the possibility of winning the customer are lower.
Right.
So, in my opinion, also, other second key point is pay attention, because the customer journey change over time. So our suggestion is, I learned this from Michael, please map continuously the customer journey. But about this, Michael, you can show us some case study or some interesting experience that we had?
Yes, certainly. So the one case study that we prepared for today is a strategic accounts team of a company that makes water filtration systems for food service industry. In this case, large restaurant chains like McDonald's and Starbucks. And their organization naturally was focused on their internal perspective. They had been trying lots of ways to improve, reading sales training books like Miller and Hyman and others, and attempting to implement those in their approaches to accounts. They decided to have each salesperson do research on a specific competitor and how to combat that competitor. And every week they would cover one of those competitors, right? So these things were sort of helping from their perspective. And when we were working with them, we interviewed some customers, and the customers were experiencing some things that were tough for them to deal with. A salesman would join the company, 6 months later, have a big win, a $500,000 order from Wendy's restaurants. He would spend then time getting that order delivered. You can imagine hundreds of pieces of parts have to be at the right restaurant at the right time, so the right technician can do the work. And that always didn't go smoothly. So that disrupted the restaurant. If you haven't got water, you can't open your doors. Yep. It could take a day or two to get the right parts Federal Expressed in, overnight shipment. And the salespeople themselves were the ones having to get in the middle and fight these battles and solve these problems. And even after they got the systems installed, after 2 or 3 years, a gasket could go bad or a part got broken and needed to be replaced. It wasn't always easy to find the right part and get it to them at the right time. And these were things that the customers were saying. And the salespeople heard this stuff, but their sales process was focused on finding leads, qualifying them, bringing in more business, right? And so as we work with them, we had to help them see that, okay, the customer's telling you this at the customer's journey here. We know you know this already because you're fighting these battles. So they were hearing the customer, but they weren't listening to the customer. And when they started to do that, they began making some changes that weren't necessarily easy to make. They had to learn how to follow a proper problem-solving process, a structured way to hand off these complex orders to the customer service department and project management, and developing consistent service level agreements so that they could be fulfilled. And it took some months of time for them to accomplish those things. But when they did, it made some very powerful results. The account manager's time spent in keeping went from, maybe 90% of their time down by at least 60%. The service levels and customer satisfaction scores increased by 70%. And as we were doing this work, we were also doing work, not just the strategic accounts, but the distribution channels and the marketing teams as well. As we were doing this work, it uncovered a fact that the number of new installations on the walls in restaurants had been declining per year for almost a decade. They didn't really have a way to measure that before because most of the revenue was from these very profitable filter replacements, right? So when you separate all that out and you get to this declining heads on the wall, the things that consume the filters, we've got a problem. So after making these changes and then enabling the salespeople to spend their time where they really wanted to in new account development, they were able to actually reverse that decline and deal flow started growing. This is a big organization in excess of $200 million. It was a big ship to turn around, and it happened because they started actually listening to what the customer was telling them and then applying the kind of problem-solving approach that a lean methodology, a lean philosophy can bring.
And sorry, Michael, this is also in my experience. For example, the last week, one of my customers asked me to prepare some training session to explain, to develop the quality for the people in the company, in the factory. When I ask them, okay, but you know really which is the quality for the customer? The answer was not. So it's impossible to prepare a session, a training session internal without listen what is the value and the quality in this case for the customer. Right. So this wall is real often present in Italian, also I think in Italian company, not also in USA. So this is incredible, I think. But Michael, just a question, another question. Are you saying there are maybe different things customers want and will pay for? Also things having little to do with production efficiency?
Absolutely. Production efficiency obviously is crucial. But value to the customer is crucial. And if you haven't operationally defined and put measurements in place to continuously improve the value you deliver to the customer, then you're disengaged from them. If your sales process is about what you do, what your people do, and then salespeople don't see this improvement stuff as part of their job. And so absolutely, this is a thing that has a very material effect on customers, even though it's intangible. But if we take this seriously and we give salespeople the opportunity and the support to begin solving these problems, then it has a marvelous effect.
Good. And I prepared just two other questions for you, Michael. In our experience, seems to match. Increasing customer value means generating hard and soft benefit to them, giving more of what they want while reducing the risk. Reducing their cost, in our experience, is includes don't waste their time, money, or liquidity. Right. Minimize the number of decisions that they have to make. In our experience, this sounds like acting a business partner, working more strategically to achieve a win-win. Right. That's, I think, is great. We try also we made a lot of projects with our customers, but how do you get these kind of things in your experience?
Well, it's a good question because obviously lots of sales training courses and CRM systems with software and designed to enable the salespeople. I mean, they're aimed at the same kind of thing. But when you approach a problem like this with a solution, here's the best practice you should use, right? This is what business value means to your customers. Instead of engaging the sales team and helping them figure it out for themselves, there's a whole different dynamic there. Anytime you introduce something that's a solution and your way of doing things, it's from outside the company, so it has to be, better. You're going to get immune reactions from salespeople, right? You can find, because of that blind men and the elephant condition, situation that we talked about before, that these salespeople are all over the place. They're not looking at the problem the way that you are. And they're very heavily conditioned by what their performance is measured by and what drives their paycheck. So to get them to reach a common agreement on what are the things that are preventing them from being successful, being able to then remove those systematically, working their way out to what's preventing the customer from being successful, and what do we as individuals have to do to make those things improve. You're winning their hearts and their minds, right? And you're enabling the salespeople to develop the knowledge and experience to understand the customer's business as if it was their own. And in this way, they become better business partners because their knowledge has expanded, because you're encouraging them, you're demanding from them
Yep.
that they understand the customer's business better and create measurable improvement that the customer can say, yes, this improved.
Yeah, I totally agree. And coming from my experience, also, I think the involvement of leaders and employees, like you told before, is a key.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say more about this in sales?
Yes. You have to have the leaders of the salespeople and the salespeople themselves to be involved in these discussions, to have some skin in the game, if you will. And the way you do that is kind of crucial. I say often to people, you sort of have to build salesmanship into the business, not just the salespeople, right? As customers' problems grow more complex, their needs in solving those problems are more complex. And their bottleneck, if you will, the things that are wasting their time can take place before the sale. It can take place after the sale. You need your salespeople to, like a Geiger counter with evidence and data, point to the place that's the biggest bottleneck, because if you can elevate that bottleneck, it's going to elevate the performance of the whole system. A client was having trouble making calls on new accounts. New accounts wouldn't call them back. They didn't have a unique enough value proposition to distinguish themselves from their competitors. This is a problem. It's something that you can solve with experimentation. And likewise, with the story we just heard, if customers are having trouble after the installations or in maintenance, and people have to be involved fixing that, that takes time away from creating more value and more profit. So you have to have they can operate in any part of finding, winning, and keeping, right? They're the geniuses of communication and understanding the customer's business and understanding your business. And they have to learn all that stuff. But if you leverage that and help them to fix these problems so that the gains can be sustained, they're able to move on to other places. Another quick example, this very same client, as a matter of fact, had a technical service line staffed by engineers, and people would call up to say, can you tell me where I can buy my replacement filters from? Who's my distributor again, right? Well, they're asking these questions that are like wasting the engineer's time. It's too simple. Why were they asking those questions? They couldn't find the answers on the company's website. So what do we fix the website? Well, IT is responsible for the website, not customer service. Right? We're looking at our business the way we want to look at it instead of the way the customer looks at it. And those are the things that have to get changed.
It's really important to have this end-to-end vision for all the people that stay in the company, especially for the people that as a contact with the customer. Yeah. Because if you have the good satisfaction in one or two, I extremize this concept in the silos, is not enough.
Right.
We need it to.
And there's all different kind of businesses out there, right? There's people who are in an engineered sale business where you have to do a lot of upfront technical work before you can even put a proposal out there. There's people that are selling massive capital equipment, a one-time sale that you make once every 10 or 15 years, right? There's people selling bandages and medicines and medical supplies, a replacement kind of a business. There's just all different sorts of things out there. And so it's hard to put a pin into a particular way of doing business that'll solve the problem, because it all, again, is contextual. It depends on the problem the customers have. Yes. I would encourage anyone in the audience, if they have some questions like how would this apply in this industry or that industry, type them in the chat. We're going to have some time at the end to answer some of these questions. So feel free to do that. Were you going to say something, Marco?
The short takeaway that I listen to you is important in my experience to simplify the path of our customer. This is the key topics for me when we start with this project, and to have the vision end-to-end along all the process.
Yes, yes. So as I've mentioned on the slide here, what we commonly find in B2B companies, again, because they hire very talented, hardworking people in sales and marketing, but they're oriented on getting a result. And God love them for doing that. Thank you. But it takes a whole company now, more and more and more. Customers are looking in places where salespeople can't go to get answers to things. Salespeople can't control the website. They can't control all these things. So your business has to be, the system has to be built, right? Yeah. If your people are comfortable with internal focus, they naturally will think that other people think like they do. They naturally get stuck in their part of the system instead of looking back, stepping back and looking at the whole system. You know, key performance indicators not aligned. A lot of smart people put those key performance indicators in place years ago. You know, this stuff isn't necessarily easy to challenge, and you can't change it all at once. And these are things that the lean philosophy helps with, dramatically helps with, because it's sort of the fundamental problem of management. How do different people with different backgrounds, working in different locations, produce exactly what the customer needs when it is needed, whether it's a piece of information that helps them align internally, or a change to the pricing, bundling, or the warranties that removes risks from them, whatever the customer needs, we can figure out how to deliver it to them if we're paying attention. And Lean's answer is to respect people by leading them through the parable. Do we all understand what value is here? To whom and for what at the customer? Have we got a way spelled out to deliver that value in the value stream? Do we have a way to make it visible so we know if a customer is really in the stage where they're ready for a proposal, or are we just wasting our time sending them a proposal or sending out samples, right? Salespeople need to know whether they're adding value or not. And we have to be concrete and explicit. They have to learn by experience, right? What concrete, explicit things to look for in the customer that tell them if they're doing the right thing at the right time. It can't be left up to opinion, right? They have to have some rationale for it. So these are all ways of sort of attacking this tangibility problem, right? Developing operational definitions of value. Who are the appropriate accounts, the appropriate customers to call on? And within those businesses, who are the individuals that are trying to solve some problem? And how do we know that? And how can we test it, right? And what can we offer them to develop a relationship, build trust, and so forth? And then again, for what? What problems are they trying to solve? The limit here is, there is no limit. This is human creativity at its maximum, because you run into all different kinds of customers and you run into all different kinds of situations. And you need your salespeople and your marketing team and servicing team to be very fluent in what drives the customers to do things, right? To dissolve this Chinese wall so that they can understand what the customer needs, how we can create it for them, so we can engage our power as leaders of our companies to continuously improve our business results. So those are that's my presentation for today. Go ahead.
A lot of important suggestion, Michael. Thank you very much. So if this is the moment for the questions coming from our participant, and they can also write the questions in the chat, please. Okay. And waiting, I broke the ice with another question, Michael, for you.
Okay.
Listening to your presentation, applying this approach seems, in my opinion, obvious, easy, natural. But if it easy, why haven't companies been doing this all along, in your opinion?
Well, obviously, because it's, you know, there's more to it than meets the eye. when you're dealing with a group of people like herding cats, you know, the old saying, they're coming from different backgrounds. And it's common. I see a lot where companies try to bring this lean approach to apply manufacturing style lean to sales and marketing. And the people trying to help the sales organization don't have any background in sales. And they tend to go in and try and teach people about lean. I'm certainly guilty of this. And that's not the place to start, right? And so if you're pushing 5S or pushing a value stream map, or you're pushing them to do something because you think that it makes sense for them to do, you're going to get resistance if it doesn't solve salespeople's immediate problems. And the taste of that failure can go a long way in preventing more efforts to create improvement, right? So we know sales and marketing has problems. And what's necessary is to get inside the salespeople's heads, to help them, like the blind man and the elephant, right? To express what they're seeing, to identify the evidence and the data and separate it from the opinions, and to work together to identify causes and effects, and then enable them to make these changes that create improvement, because that's when they really start learning. Sure. That's when you've got their hearts and minds in this, because they know it's going to be better once they finish doing this. And that's not necessarily an easy thing for all leaders and managers or in all companies. They aren't necessarily used to that culture.
Thank you, Michael. We have a question coming from Matteo. I am really proud that Matteo stayed with us today, and it's a lot of time, I can see. Hello there. I would like to say that I agree the involvement of the whole company to be aligned in the sales process. It is very important. At the same time, it is critical to keep separated the scope of operation of each person and avoid overlapping of responsibilities, which is also critical in the process efficiency, as well as in keeping a healthy corporate environment. So I think this is a good question for you, Michael. Thank you, Matteo.
Yeah, it is a good question. I guess I might push back a little.
I would like to say that I agree the involvement of the whole company to be aligned in the sales process is very important.
Yes.
Yes.
At the same time, it's critical, yeah, to keep separated the scope of operation of each person. So who defined the scope of operation of each person? And when was that done? I get, because of the work that I do, I get to have some interesting phone calls with people from time to time. And I had a conversation with a fellow who had gone to work for a small company up in Chicago. And this was when LinkedIn was starting to really take off and be powerful. And this fellow was doing a good job. He was making his sales quota, and he was doing it because he had figured out how to reach out to people in his area on LinkedIn, which meant he was sitting in the office instead of being out on calls. And the owner of the company was demanding that he get out of the office and go make calls, right? So in that case, the definition of that person's role may needed to be adjusted, right? And so if you're in an organization where people are expected to follow these rigid structures, that may be part of the problem. We need people to work together to create the result we need for the customer and for us. And if that means some of these roles need to change, that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. I know you've run into this also, Marco. I mean, how would you answer that question?
Yeah. And just to close, Michael.
Okay.
Because the time is.
We're getting close.
Yes. This could seem like a big, scary challenges for the sales teams. They still have to carry their quotas, for example. How do you deal with that in your experience?
It's a common situation, and it's absolutely true. And so including the leaders and then the employees around your particular elephant is crucial, right? You are giving them an opportunity to change the system that they live in. That's a heck of an opportunity. And so it's an opportunity for them to make their work lives better. Now they have to prove it, that these changes will create measurable improvement. So they have to do some work to get that accomplished. And they're the ones that have to decide, yeah, that's worth it. And some of them are more likely to do that and less likely, especially in the beginning. But as long as management provides the support that they need and improvement actually starts happening, then momentum is going to increase. I mean, I've been involved in these where the managers and the president of the company is like, I don't know, these salespeople, I don't want them to resist. I'm afraid they're going to resist this process stuff. So we get in and start working with the sales team, identifying what their problems are. And the salespeople are like, yes, we've been wanting to do this forever. And we never had the opportunity to do this. This is wonderful. I mean, they want these changes to make life better for them and for their customers. And as they go through this process, they're kind of like Six Sigma projects, if you will, they learn a lot about how to define problems, how to measure and get data, how to identify cause and effect, how to communicate with each other internally and communicate with other departments. We've had people whose careers were really enriched by the experience of going through these process improvements. And some of them go on to be, general managers, very high level executive positions because of what they learn in their formative years, if you will, as salespeople or account managers earlier.
Michael, we have another question.
Okay.
So coming from Margit, thank you, Margit. Good evening, Michael and Marco. Thanks for today's initiative, really interesting points. How would you recommend communicating customer problems to the internal organization that the external sales force is listening to?
Ooh, that's a great one. Because if the sales team is bringing bad news to the internal organization, that always goes over well, right?
Yeah, typical.
It's an important problem. And again, who is sitting around the elephant? When we do these, you have to bring in the stakeholders for the key parts of the business that may well be impacted or may well have to change. So if you have to bring a customer service person in, or project manager or product engineer to participate, that's how you do it. Because then they can have a voice in the beginning, listening to the evidence and data that other people bring about, their side of the elephant, and getting things clarified, right? So the team has respectful agreement on what the problem looks like and smells like and what ought to be the first things we start doing here. And when they're given that opportunity, there's much less likely to we shoot the messenger, as they say, right? They're more likely to be able to buy into it and understand it and communicate it back to others in their department. Again, not easy, not fast, not a quick fix, but it's about elevating everybody's knowledge to understand the context of the customer, right? And the causes of the problem and so forth.
This is opportunity for the people, for the company, and also naturally for the customer. Okay, thanks, Michael. As a final takeaway, is the time. I believe that the content presented today offer significant point of interest for the participant, and I think also confirm the great alignment between what you have presented and the operational approach of STAUFEN's projects, like as this slide shows. In my opinion, today the companies and their employees are called to respond and adapt to rapid change, new business models, product and service offered by the competitors. And the company that uses the lean approach and wants to achieve a sustainable operation excellence over time must act on both dimensions, people and processes. And when we talk about people, the awareness of the role and the capabilities becomes an important element to train, like you told just now. But in my opinion, the most important aspect is to involve the people in improvement activities because only thanks to the contribution of the people in the Gemba, where the things happen, it is possible to achieve sustainability over time. Always respecting the human nature, as Michael explained to us. And similarly, in the other dimension, the analysis and the redesign of processes must be carried out with and by people, because only through their full involvement is possible to implement sustainable processes over time. And also today we have understood, I think, how important is to align the sales process with the customer journey, and to deeply understand the customer or product production process in order to be perceived as a partner able to generating the value that the customer is looking for. In summary, the human aspect within lean thinking is central to any activity you intend to undertake, even in the sales world, as Michael told us today. Well, Michael, so I thank you, and I hope to still to have the opportunity to continue our talking about lean sales session. And really thank you very much from me and from STAUFEN.Italia. You are our real partner along the time, and I hope that also our participant appreciate this discussion today.
Well, thank you very much, Marco. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to talking with you again. And anyone who's participated, if there's questions or curiosities, talk to Marco, and then we'll do our best to be of some service.
Yes, if you want, put the last slide, Michael. And yes. Before saying goodbye, if anyone would like further information, insight, articles, or case history, don't hesitate to write me, and the contact right on this slide. So we finish just in the right time. Is a lean approach. Is 6 o'clock. Thank you again, Michael, and thank you all the participants for today. Have a good night.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.